Okay.
We had that
Let me just double check everybody on the phone. We convened the meeting earlier this evening at, I believe at 6:54. Director Slater-Carter joined us a few minutes after that in closed session. Let me go around the table and make sure we're all still here. Director Huber, are you here?
I am here.
Director Slater-Carter, are you here? If she's not here, she'll be dialing back in shortly. She had to drop off for a few minutes. Director Huber is, as noted on the agenda, and Director Slater-Carter, also noted on the agenda, are participating in a teleconference from locations that are printed on the agenda. We also have Director Harvey,
what's his name?
Director Dwight. You get on camera in front of a microphone and all of a sudden the most obvious names evade. I always thought the nameplate should be facing
It's called aging, Scott.
well, I'm glad we have a professional on that subject here. And of course I'm present too. So we expect Director Slater-Carter to be along shortly. So we met in closed session. We came out of closed session with no action to report. President's statement. Let me just mention that we have had some good rain recently, and we're very grateful for it. We are at about half of where we have been in the recent years for the annual rainfall. We have we're fully independent of the rest of the water system that much of the state relies upon, and our local sources are in very good shape. This isn't the kind of thing we'd want to do year over year, but for the moment things are looking okay. But we do ask that everyone be water wise and conserve now before things get tight and we find out maybe we weren't as conservative as we could have been. So a little bit of forethought could go a long way here. There has been talk at the state level about possible restrictions on new connections for users of state water, if you'll call it, so Hetch Hetchy or other state supplies, or well, that's not a state supply, that's a San Francisco supply, but for outside supplies. Our district, as I mentioned, is completely independent on Wells and Montara Creek, and we're not subject to that. We are accepting applications for new connections and have had applications for new connections. So because we've heard at least one report of someone being uncertain about that, let me assure you we are accepting connections for, or applications for new connections and are able to serve those. Do we have any oral comments for items other than those on the agenda?
Yes.
So that would be this one. So Stacy Sable, if you would come to the mic.
Yeah. Is it okay if I sit here?
Actually, we need you at the mic, and the reason for that is
mic,
for the
sure.
camera. It's not amplified, but
That's fine.
Those two there.
It's not amplified, it's just for show?
no, it's for the camera.
Okay, very good. Hi. So good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. My name's Stacy Sable. I live in Moss Beach in the Seal Cove community at 121 Bernal Avenue. And I'm here with a request, as well as perhaps you could supply me with some clarification. By way of background, we're in zoning district S10, where the minimum lot size requirement is 20,000 square feet, and that's because we are right next to the open space, the post-open space that goes on for about a mile between our road, Bernal Avenue, and Pillar Point. So it's that county preserve land, and so we have this zoning requirement because we're in this wildlife transition zone where, you know, blue heron walk down our street and the owls land on our roofs and so forth, and the density becomes a little bit zoned for higher density a street or two back. The reason that I mention this is important. There are people now looking to develop in lots that are vacant in our neighborhood, and while a lot of our neighborhood was developed 70s and 80s, and in the last 30 years or so, you know, everybody knows environmental consciousness has changed. I'm an environmental engineer myself. I'm in charge of about 100 engineers and scientists in the state of California. And because of that, there's been different requirements for zoning. application. So where there was a, laxness in the past about enforcing those rules, in really the recent decade or more, people have been required to buy additional lots before they can have new housing development. So why is all this relevant? There's a lot of discussion in our neighborhood. I don't know where the truth lies, that new water permits are being issued prior to a new build being approved by zoning and planning. And I want to see if that's the case. I'm particularly interested in one that came before design review today, which is at the corner of San Ramon and Bernal Avenue in Moss Beach. I don't know if there's been a water permit issued for that or not. There are lots of lots now that people are showing renewed interest in. As a community, we're very conscious about the environmental rules. There's been 24 people protesting just having the street paved. So you can imagine how the community is coming together over these issues, and will be going before zoning. So my specific request would be, and it looks like your process follows that, so I hope it's the process that you're following.
Let's go to our general manager, if you
Yeah.
could.
I think
I
I can
haven't-
answer this very clear and very directly.
Yes,
The issuance of water permits depends on a building permit. So we're walking through this with the Sanitary County hand in hand. And in essence, no empty lot will see a water connection. Again, you need a building permit, building permit to
Good.
be able to get a water connection with the district.
Now, let me ask a clarifying question. So they apply for a water connection before they have a building permit, right? Because they need to show that they've
No.
applied for service?
No, they apply for a building permit, and that is when we receive a referral from the county at which we acknowledge that we have the capacity to serve the project, and that the county can move forward with the building permit. At that point, after the county approves that permit, we receive, they send the customer to us, and we then start the process. The connection will only be issued and signed off actually in conjunction with the occupancy permit later. So
and where is the zoning and planning approval process in the process that you just outlined?
No, that precedes the building permit. The building
It
permit.
precedes it?
Yes.
Okay. I hope that that's true. I can tell you that, for example, the design review committee is reviewing designs before it's gone through zoning and planning.
They have to. That's actually part of the process.
Okay.
There should be a flow chart on this.
Yeah,
but
and it's been
design review
unclear.
proceeds. But there's an order.
Yeah.
And that sounds like the order I'm familiar with, which is fairly orderly. And
Yeah, I mean, in some cases, it's unfortunate because people are spending 50,000 on architectural drawings for houses that may never be approved because they're on
Right.
substandard lots. And so that's part of what I wanted to make sure wasn't happening here, that you weren't issuing water permits and collecting the fees for those before these went through the full process. If you're assuring me that that's not the case, then that's great. So if I understand correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, you'll receive the application, but you won't formally approve it until it's a final part of the overall development process. Is that correct?
it sounded like what
we receive the application only after the planning commission review. Essentially, we wait for a referral from the county, and for the applicant to be sent to us by the county. So that's, you need the documents.
and we won't actually turn on the water until the final of the building permit has been
That's correct, until
approved.
occupancy permit has been issued.
right.
So you don't charge the fee and grant the permit until the building has been fully approved by the county and the
When-
coastal
when do we take
commission,
the
is that
funds?
correct?
Well, with approval of the project, we take the funds. The connection is signed off after construction.
Okay, so those funds are, if I understand correctly, those funds are twofold. One is for some engineering costs, and other is for the connection fee itself.
Right, there are application inspection fees,
So-
engineering review,
Right.
deposits, and a connection fee.
So should something happen and the final not happen, some portion of that is refundable?
Yes,
Everything but the application, is that?
Well, there's the things that go to direct costs, like engineering fees, I don't believe are, but
Mhm.
that's correct. application fee, and engineering review, it's a deposit that we ask for at the beginning, so whatever has been used up would be non-refundable, but connection fee and inspection fee are.
Okay, so, it is a final stage of the process, is that right? After,
I think the clarification is that we're not a planning group.
Right,
So the approval of the planning is with the county, and when that is essentially completed and approved,
good.
then the water basically takes from
Yeah.
there.
And is the
And-
coastal
and some-
commission part of that?
Could be, depending
Yes.
on whether
The
or not
area.
that, whether or not the work of the planning commission or the board of supervisors, if it goes to them, if that gets appealed, it could wind up there, but that's
Right.
something outside of our control.
Okay,
The coastal commission was vital in approval of our public works plan, which
Sure.
allows us to issue connections.
right, right.
And there are some conditions on that, but basically, those conditions allow us to issue connections when a building permit has been issued.
Right,
And the good news, Clem has covered a lot of ground. The good news is, the county's coordinating with us and referring over applicants who have gotten far enough through the permitting
Okay.
process. And that's
Okay.
very good news.
so, the fees, though, I guess, when do you start accepting fees? Because and to be honest with you, I'll just tell you what people are saying. People are saying that you all are handing out permits like candy, and that you just pay the fee and you're gonna get a permit.
Clemens, could you address how many permit applications?
So we received the approval of the Public Works Plan, which allows us to issue connections in December 2013.
Yeah.
And we just looked up, we issued 4 connections since December for new construction.
And how can I find out what those connections are?
It's a matter of public record, is it not?
Yes,
So
for
you can,
example,
you can.
you could go on our webpage and look
I've
at
not
the-
found it there.
The consent agenda contains contains a report on how many connections have been issued.
Yeah.
I'm
This-
interested in knowing the locales.
Right, and that'll be on, that's in the,
That's not listed. Oh, actually,
no, it is.
listed,
It is, the
yes, you're
APN
right.
is listed, or the address is listed.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
every time we have a consent agenda, somewhere in here, and that's, we're flipping through because there's a lot on the consent
Yeah.
agenda, but one piece of that is applications received,
Uh-huh.
and I found it earlier.
0 this
This
time around.
Okay, good.
So I can tell you that.
Another way to do it is to come and ask. It is
Just
a
come
matter-
in during
I mean,
open
I don't want
hours
to create a lot of
take
work for
look.
staff, but it
No,
is a
I
matter
know
of public
we don't need
record.
to do what is on
So
camera.
this is how this looks like.
Yeah.
Right, so,
So you say that this should be in the consent agenda that's online?
That's right.
yes.
Okay.
So when you look at our meeting agendas, you
Okay.
should find that there.
Okay, well, you've given me great assurance. It sounds like this is the final part after the county approval
Right,
process.
we have no interest in getting involved in the planning process
Okay,
whatsoever.
good. Okay, very good. That concludes it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Let's move to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull any items for consideration?
Yes, this is Joe, and I just have one real quick question on the executive summary on the financial statement.
If that's the only thing, let's hear that and then take them as a whole.
Okay, so it's basically 5950 dam maintenance, pumping $13,695 above budget. Large expense incurred in February for a sewer lift station. And Clemens, do you have any comment on that, what that was about?
6950, okay, SAM maintenance pumping, $13,000 above budget. Okay, so essentially this is a repair that was undertaken through SAM at a pump station, a district-owned pump station. And Bill, I would have to look up the exact work that was done. We authorized a pump that to be changed out, and I'm assuming that that is the change out of a pump at the Weimar station, but I would have to
Okay.
confirm this.
Okay, but there's nothing unusual about that then.
No, it's,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So roll call.
Okay,
I
so
second the motion.
Dwight and Jim move in second.
Director Slater Carter. Director Harvey.
Aye.
Director Boyd.
Aye.
Director Wilson.
Aye.
Director Huber.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 4-0. Okay, no old business. New business, item 1, review and possible action to adopt resolutions determining acquisition of Pillar Ridge Water System categorically exempt from CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, and authorizing and directing execution of water system acquisition agreement.
So we've been negotiating with Coach of San Diego. They're the owners of the Pillar Ridge Manufacturers Home Park, so Pillar Ridge, for the acquisition of the Pillar Ridge water system. And what this is essentially Pillar Ridge has a connection to the district. They're receiving water from us. At one point, our predecessor companies were unable to provide enough water for this community.
Catherine, is that you? I heard a beep. No, okay, let's proceed.
Okay. And the owners then essentially installed a water system, some wells and a treatment plant and a tank that guaranteed the water source for Pillar Ridge. Again, they have a connection with us and are utilizing water on and off. And essentially, I'll call this, we now fixed up our system. Our system is, again, it's one of, I can really say it is one of the most reliable systems in California today. And I would call this a homecoming for this, for the Pillar Ridge water system. So the intent is that the district acquires and runs the Pillar Ridge water system. We have an agreement that includes the terms and conditions of the acquisition that so far were negotiated by the district. We like to ask to review this with the board, and then in addition, this acquisition is not a project as contemplated by the California Environmental Quality Act, but simply a real property transaction. It's categorically exempt from CEQA, and we have to approve a resolution determining that the water system acquisition is categorically exempt. So the recommendation is to adopt two resolutions. One is a resolution determining the acquisition of Pillar Ridge water system categorically exempt from CEQA, and the other resolution would be authorizing and directing execution of Pillar Ridge water system acquisition agreement. And I think I want to turn this over maybe to Dave. You can probably introduce the agreement.
Mr. President, as you know, the agreement has been under negotiation for some weeks, and there's been back and forth draft agreements, and the board has been presenting a draft which was received today from Pillar Ridge's attorney, and it proposes some revisions to our last submittal. Our recommendation, if you desire to proceed with the transaction tonight and adopt a resolution, would be to direct staff, myself, to revise the draft submitted by Pillar Ridge today in the following summarized fashion. We propose adding a recital to the beginning of the agreement, which essentially sets forth the intent of the parties to provide service to Pillar Ridge consistent to that, essentially consistent to that which they've had, but subject to the all the terms and conditions of them joining as a member of the community water system. So they would be subject, of course, to the district's regulations, but the present intent is to provide service at least consistent with the existing service. That would be one revision. The Bill Ridge had requested a change that essentially touches upon the legislative authority of the district, and that is referred in part under a definition of new master meter. The agreement provides for, there's an existing master meter, but we plan to install a new master meter for operational purposes. And the proposed change that they made would be to essentially not increase the size of the master meter or the billing process. Our recommendation is to revise that to make it any increases would be subject to changes in demand, essentially different from that which we provide service now. So we need to have a little better understanding that circumstances could change, and if they do, then the district obviously has to have the authority to change its service as well. The provision also that they had submitted in paragraph 3 having to do with conveyancing the easements and so forth, the coach had requested that if we did not complete the acquisition within 90 days after the effective date of the agreement, then the agreement would terminate. I'm not sure whether they thought that through fully, because that could redound to their detriment, perhaps more than to us, but not notwithstanding. What we suggest doing is that what we can do, because the effectiveness of the agreement will be contingent upon an amendment to our operating permit, so we can agree to submit applications for necessary permits within, say, 10 days after close of escrow, showing that we're doing what we can to complete the transaction, but obviously we can't complete the transaction insofar as it's contingent on approvals outside of our control. Then Pelder Ridge had requested substantial changes to paragraph 9, water supply and rates. They're substantial in the sense of how they're set forth, but the theory is about the same that we discussed momentarily ago, that they would want assurance that we will provide supply, service, and billing essentially unchanged. And clearly the district it would not be in the district's best interest, and probably not the Pelder Ridge either, not to recognize that there may be significant changes. If Pelder Ridge changes its use, land use, its occupancy, density, and so forth, the district has to be able to respond accordingly. So our recommendation is to refer to, first of all, that the transaction will be subject to the district code, and that the Pelder Ridge, as all other users of the water system, will be subject to the relevant provisions of the district code and water regulations. And we propose also to add, if there are significant changes, then the parties will renegotiate in good faith terms and conditions reflective of those changes. The Pelder Ridge, the last major item, well, one item that they wanted to do was to eliminate what we refer to as the force majeure clause, which essentially excuses the parties performing under the agreement if something happens over which they have no control. And that cuts both ways. I mean, they could be affected the same way. I think perhaps inadvertent elimination of that clause may also have served to the detriment of Pillar Ridge, but essentially we need to reinstitute it from our standpoint to recognize that there are elements of the transaction not under control, such as the issuance of entitlements and permits. So that's parallel to the other clause that I referred to. And then finally, the other change, they took exception to our clause regarding assignment of the agreement. They essentially wanted, have submitted a revision that would require us to agree to accept an assignment to any assignee that agrees to be bound by the agreement. That is problematic because, as you know, one of the reasons for requiring review for assignments is to assure that the assignee is able to perform the agreement. So what our recommendation is that we add to the clause, which we often have in our agreements, that it'll be subject to our approval, which will not unreasonably be withheld. I think that summarizes the changes that we recommend.
So, do we have any comment from the public? Okay, let's go to the board. Board, do we have any discussion?
So if we approve this, then we'll make those changes and we'll staff will check them, you'll check them?
Right, and then we'll transfer it to Pillar Ridge for their approval.
Okay.
And if the board desires to approve the agreement subject to those provisions, then I'd recommend first addressing the resolution determining the acquisition is categorically exempt from CEQA, and then the second resolution would be approving and authorizing execution of the agreement as revised by the board.
I do have one comment, though. I do think that if you continue to get pushback of any significance, that it may be worth calling this group back together make that as part of the, I mean, I think that goes without saying, but I think for the public consumption, we should, since there's been a lot of back and forth, I would
That's
hope
fair.
that we would come to some
Okay.
kind of determination. But otherwise, I think I'm good.
Yes, if the board is interested in doing that, by all means.
Well, I mean, it just seems to me either it's going to come to conclusion or it's not, and you're getting to that point,
Yeah.
so.
We're down to it.
Yeah.
It's,
Okay, so,
well, let me
Go ahead.
go around. Catherine, did you have any comment?
I'm sorry.
No, I think Dave's on point with his suggestions, particularly for paragraph 9. I'm very concerned about the changes that they made, and I'm also very concerned about the fact that they knew this was on our agenda today and it slid in at the last minute. So, having said that, I stand by, I think we need to follow our attorney's best advice.
Okay. Bill, do you have any comment?
Just the fact that I could not really hear what Dwight had to say, so Dave was much closer to the microphone than I could hear, so Dave, would you mind rephrasing
Well,
what Dwight said?
I'd be happy to repeat it. Dwight was Dwight was just saying that if we get any significant pushback, it'd probably be a good idea to call this group back together to reconsider. And we all nodded our heads.
It's also such that we understand that the agreement is approved subject to the changes that were mentioned tonight.
Yes.
And as soon as there are further changes now are implemented through Coach, we don't have board approval
That's correct.
for this agreement, so
Yeah.
we would be required to bring it back.
Right.
Okay.
Very good point.
All right. Jim, did you have any more comments?
No, but.
I'm going around. I'm going to make a couple of comments.
Okay.
But Dwight, did you have anything further? All right. So it's the last here. Let me just mention that we have been talking to Millennium Housing Coach, the Pillar Ridge folks now for quite some time, and when they first approached, the idea was we understood their desire. I mean, they're really about the housing. They're not wanting to be a utility. But at the time, it just seemed really infeasible to try to work something out. We knew that the system would take a little bit of work to bring it up to district standards. We knew that there were a number of challenges in terms of billing. There was concern on both sides, which I want to give express acknowledgement to, that the residents of this low-income housing not for trying to bring them into the larger community system. They are already on the system, but in kind of a very specialized arrangement in trying to make that more normal. The big concern on both sides that we not somehow adversely impact the residents of the low-income housing community. So that was one of the things that made it look really hard to do. But over the course of the years, we've met with them quite a number of times, and they've been a good partner to meet with and work through these issues. They've been a strong advocate for the residents of their community, and I think that we have as well brought into that discussion one of the leading advocates for the members of that community, one of the residents there, who I believe is the president of the Homeowners Association. And I think where we are right now is a remarkable place to be. We believe that we have something that is essentially almost no change whatsoever in terms of revenue or cost to any of the parties. We get some significant benefit from having some of their supply and some of their storage become part of our system, which can become part of our calculations for available supply, which will give us more operational flexibility. And one of the things I've learned over the years working with Clemens and Tanya is that operational flexibility has given us the room to become one of the most reliable water systems in the state. So this is something that helps us continue down that path. It also gets a water utility into being the primary party responsible for maintaining the water supply, the treatment for the folks who live in Pillar Ridge. We have more resources to work with that are very focused on water. So we believe that overall this will be good for all concerned. It will take something that's been an historical oddity as part of the system, but not really part of the system, and brings it in much closer. And I think it'll be good for the community as a whole to have us all together on the same system. And I want to especially commend Tanya and Clemens and Dave for their really hard work in their areas of specialization to get us to this point. It could not have happened without them. So with that, do we have a motion on the CEQA resolution?
Sure, I resolve a motion for resolution, lecture order, resolution of the Montara Water Sanitary District determining that acquisition of Pillar Ridge water system is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act and authorizing filing of notice of exemption for said acquisition.
Can I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. So Jim moved, Dwight seconded. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Dr. Slater Carter,
Aye.
Dr. Harvey,
Aye.
Dr. Boyd,
Aye.
Dr. Wilson,
Aye.
Dr. Huber.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0. Now we need a motion on the resolution approving the agreement, subject to the edits.
I'm happy to do that. And so do we have resolution numbers on these just out of?
Yes, so 1566 is the CEQA motion.
Okay, and then this is this 1567?
7.
So I won't read it, it's in there for you. So move resolution number 1567.
So we have a motion, do we have a second?
I second the motion.
Okay, thank you. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Slater Carter,
Aye.
Dr. Harvey.
Aye.
Dr. Boyd,
Aye.
Dr. Wilson,
Aye.
Dr. Huber.
Bill?
Oops, I had it on mute, I'm sorry. Aye.
So I'm recording yours as an aye. So motion carries 5-0, or maybe 9-0, depending on how we count that.
Second launch.
So this is I do want to say, I'm hoping that the folks from Millennium and Coach are watching, and we're grateful to be at this point. I know we have a few minor wording changes that we're suggesting, but our intent is to bring this thing to a happy conclusion, to achieve the mutual goals that we spelled out, and bear with us, and we'll work with you to get through this. Item 2, review and possible action to adopt resolution for approval of new 500,000 gallon Alta Vista tank number 2.
The board recently approved the bidding process for the new Alta Vista tank number 2 project. And we issued the notice of impending development for the new 500,000 gallon Alta Vista tank. And we now received a request from the Coastal Commission staff. So we submit the NOID to the Coastal Commission for review. And we received a request that a new resolution be authorized by this board to indicate the tank size of 500,000 gallons. So we're asking for the adoption of resolution, and I understand it's 1568 of the Montara Water and Sanitary District approving contract documents for the 500,000 gallon Alta Vista water storage tank number 2 project, and authorizing and directing the general manager to advertise the project for public bidding.
Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, let me note, over the course of the work in the Public Works Plan, in the 10 going on 11 years that we've had the system, initially we believed we needed a 1 million gallon tank. Over the course of that period, we have done just a tremendous amount of work to improve our water supply and our storage. Just having completed 1 replacement and 1 new tank at the schoolhouse site for a total increase of 100,000 gallons. And other improvements to the system. I'm pleased that our staff and our engineer have seen the opportunity to save some money here and get us a tank that's going to have a much longer life. So I'm going to vote aye very happily. No further discussion. May we have a roll call vote, please?
The motion.
Oh, may we have a motion before the roll call vote?
So I'll
please?
make a motion to pass resolution number 1568, resolution of the Montara Water Sanitary District approving contract documents for the 500,000 gallon Alta Vista water storage tank number 2 project, and authorizing and directing the general manager to advertise the project for public bidding.
I'll second it.
Thank you. So Jim moves, Dwight seconds. Roll call vote, please.
Director Slater Carter,
Aye.
Director Harvey,
Aye.
Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Wilson,
Aye.
Director Huber.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. The motion carries 5-0. Item number 3, review and possible action regarding an award of contract for labor compliance monitoring for the Alta Vista Tank number 2 project.
So since this project will be funded through the state revolving funds, that's a state construction loan, we're required to comply with the applicable provisions of the California Labor Code, and that requires labor compliance monitoring. We previously contracted with Contractor Compliance and Monitoring Inc., CCMI, to manage the prior work, and we've asked for a proposal from them and received a proposal for the scope of work for the 14-month project of $15,000. That is money that would come out of the district's water capital fund, specific to this Alta Vista tank project. So recommendation is to authorize the general manager to execute a contract with CCMI of San Mateo, California, with a not to exceed amount of $15,000.
Do we have any questions or comments from the public How about from the board?
Okay, yes, this is Bill. And that, when I looked at it, it shows that on the scope of work, there's like 20 items on it and so forth. That are we basically going to go for the blanket contract for 15,000, or are we going to do this sort of a la carte?
Could you repeat this again? Bill, I'm not sure if I got that fully.
Okay, that the amount of the contract is 15,000, and the scope of work shows that there's approximately 20 items. In the proposal from CCMI, it lists a number of different options. Is it necessary to go for the blanket contract for 15,000, or are there other options that we can use to reduce the cost of that?
I mean, what we're asking is clearly the full $15,000, and the scope of work is applicable to our project. So I'm not sure how to reduce this further.
Okay, very good.
What was that? 1 second.
We have negotiated with them and they reduced their price. Director Huber, if I may, so if you look at their fee schedule, so we have two options, so either the flat fee of 15,000 or hourly, or all the services in accordance with their hourly rates. And so when we summed up the hours, the potential, what we will be asking them to do, it depends on the contractor very much, who we select. Who will win the bid. It will be a much greater amount. The risk would be higher if we go with hourly rates. So we thought for a little over $1,000 a month, this was a better deal for the district than the hourly rates.
Okay, very good. It's fine with me. I have no further comments.
Okay, if we have no further questions, can we have a motion, please?
Oh, so moved, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
So with Dwight moving and Jim seconding, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Slater Carter,
Aye.
Director Harvey,
Aye.
Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Wilson,
Aye.
Director Huber.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0. Next item, item 4, review and possible action for the schoolhouse tank number 2 west, notice of completion and contract release.
So the contractor that constructed the tank, Paso Robles, has completed all the work on the Schoolhouse Tank West project. The district water system engineer and staff found the work satisfactory. We received a memorandum from district's water engineer that recommends to accept the project. That also means that now a 5% retention payment in the amount of over $26,000 is due to the contractor upon the district acceptance of the contract and receipt of the signed and notarized release of contract formed by the district. So the recommendation is to accept the Schoolhouse Tank West project and authorize the general manager to file the notice of completion.
Do we have any public comment? Any director comment? Questions?
Are you happy with the project?
Everyone seemed,
Yes, we're absolutely happy with the project.
at the ribbon cutting, everyone seemed pretty happy.
Yes.
Yeah, as tanks go, as tanks go, they're beautiful tanks.
Yeah. I was going to ask about painting them transparent, but I understand that would have cost a lot more. Can we have a motion, please?
Okay, so moved. I move to accept the schoolhouse.
Catherine or Bill, can we have a second, please?
Yeah,
I second.
I can stop.
Bill got in there first. I'm giving it to Bill. Thank you both of you. So we have.
Jeopardy, right?
Yeah, You got to know how to use that buzzer. You didn't phrase it in the form of a question, though. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Slater Carter,
Aye.
Director Harvey,
Aye.
Director Boyd,
Aye.
Dr. Wilson,
Aye.
Dr. Huber,
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0. We should get some Jeopardy buzzers. That'd be good.
We should.
But I'm not sure about phrasing in the form of a question. All right, item number 5, review and possible action for award of contract for the CCWD MWSD Mutual Aid Intertie Implementation Feasibility Study. That is a long title.
Scott, give me a pen.
So, we've been working for a long time with Coastside County Water District on the establishment of mutual, an agreement that allows for water exchange in case of emergency, and that has been established in 2010. And now we've been asked to essentially set a scope of work and get a proposal from SRT to provide an implementation feasibility study for that intertie. So the district's water engineer, SRT, myself and Dave Dixon met. Dave Dixon, the general manager with Coastside County Water District, met and discussed the scope of work. I actually think that it is fairly accurately reflected here in this proposal. And we received the proposal this week. And I had a conversation with Dave Dixon this morning in which he raised some concerns about the proposal. We also had a conversation with the district water engineer. What I've heard now from Tanya is that Dave has essentially requested that we pull this item. I think we could move this item to a later meeting. I didn't get a chance to connect with Dave after that. I'm not quite sure if there's a timing issue here. I don't see one. So I'm going to suggest that we move this item to a later meeting.
I'm okay with that, if we're not quite ready. I do want to, well, I don't know if we have any members of the audience who had anything they want to comment on. Okay. We did have 2 of our very regular attendees not able to join us tonight, but I want to thank them for sending some email. And they did mention that they didn't have the email addresses for the 2 newer members, but I will make sure in my reply to them that they get those.
I'll forward it already.
Yeah, you did.
Oh, okay, very good. They had a number of questions about the item, and I'm just going to run through this real quickly so everyone's familiar with. Will there be public meetings held to allow for community oversight? Will there be members of the public allowed at all the meetings? Will there be a well-defined list of criteria for when the plan will be implemented? Will there be a cap or limit on exporting MWSD resources? Will there be a cost recovery plan for MWSD to be reimbursed after the fact? Will the MWSD community get to vote on any plan that is proposed? These are from Bill Kehoe. He continues, these are just off the top of my head, but my point is that MWSD ratepayers have spent 10 years and lots of their hard-earned money on building up the MWSD resources, and that investment needs to be protected at all costs. While I believe most of the community would be willing to help our neighbors in an emergency, we would expect our cost in participating be repaid. And then Sid Young chimes in, also can't attend tonight, but agreeing with Bill Kehoe's comments, wants to know the cost of the study, asks if it'll be paid for on a 50-50 basis, and then observes that since we're the smaller district, maybe 50-50 isn't the right way, isn't equitable. Okay, so with those comments now, those involved in preparing the materials and having the discussions with CCWD have heard these, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon, hopefully with something that CCWD is ready to move forward on.
But before we move on, can you just share what the concerns that are being raised by Dixon?
The, well, the specific concern were actually we discussed establishment of level of services, and I think the particular concern of Dave was the essentially the well, the capacity, existing capacities, capacity assessment, and we, for example, we went recently through this process with the California Coastal Commission, at which we established and clearly laid out our capacity, and this is all very well documented. And I think we would, this proposal would essentially look into similar information from Coastside County Water District. So what I understood from Dave was that he was concerned about about essentially the capacity being assessed, and the Coastside County Water District's capacities and capacity needs being assessed in this study. Tanya, do I get this right? Was it a similar conversation you had?
Yeah. So what happened was, general managers talked briefly, and then I got a message from Dave Dixon, with a phone call which I returned, and this is what I heard. But then Dave Dixon was going to call Clemens and reconnect, but that never happened. So
Okay.
we're not. This is what we heard.
But you're not sure.
We're not certain.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, it's good to see it at this point, and this looks like the culmination of a long effort, and something that we're looking forward to. I know that there's some concern about what it means. Well,
I
okay,
have a comment.
okay, I'll get to you in a second. I know that not having seen details on where this goes, obviously, you know, when we look at like Bill Keogh's comments, I mean, there's some concern, but I think reducing it to the tangible form, and that's part of what the study is about, will help us communicate with the community better about what exactly it means. Catherine?
Yeah, I was on the negotiating committee, and there was never a permanent hardline intertie contemplated. It was always going to be, in the event of an emergency, for a short-term supply with a pipe, overground pipe. And I'm very curious. It appears from what I'm hearing that something else has been contemplated by this. And one of the chief clauses or requirements in all of this is all the regulatory agencies have to be involved in this, and we have to get the permits for it. Now, if it were a true emergency with an overground pipe, you could get after the fact permit. But I'm very concerned about even contemplating anything other than that, because of what it could do to our DHS agreements and their oversight on it, Coastal Commission, and I believe it would require a whole keeper, and not to mention San Francisco PUC. So I'm very, very concerned about all of this, and I think it requires quite a bit more study. And I'm not asking for us to have our engineers study it. That gets very expensive very quickly.
So the committee is currently comprised of,
Bill and I.
okay. Do either of you want to respond?
Well, I think it's kind of premature since Dave Dixon has kind of held up the process at this point, so I'd rather not respond right now.
Bill, did you want to add any comment?
Yeah, I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing, so at this point, I really, the only comment I would have is think does not allow for the fact that if you have an emergency, that we can act quickly enough to solve a problem. And basically, the reason for doing this is to be able to work out a solution in advance so that if an emergency does come up, that the implementation of it would be prompt and to be effective.
I would like to ask, what are the alternatives that you anticipate examining? Because I was thinking they would be called out, but I don't actually see them called out.
We can't sign these.
The
signature
alternatives?
checks.
Yes.
Oh, we don't. To this, to Intertype?
Well, task 3, the alternative analysis.
Well, the reason they're not spelled out is, this is why we're having this either confusion or misunderstanding and need more discussion, is what I pulled out for is establishing level of service goals, which will then spell out alternatives, because
I see.
we don't know what alternatives are. We discussed in the meeting that we had with both general managers, the alternatives starting from trucking the water
Mhm.
to permanent connection, so there's a whole range. But to get to alternatives, we need some criteria established of what are we trying to accomplish, which is a level of service goals. And I think Dave was a little uncomfortable with that, that's why we need a little further discussion.
Okay. All right, well, we'll take no action on this tonight and look forward to seeing it on a future agenda soon. Moving on to item 6, review and possible action for support of Assembly Bill 1970.
So Assembly Bill 1970 is sponsored by Rich Gordon and essentially proposes to create the Community Investment and Innovation Program for grants and other financial assistance for local governments to develop and implement greenhouse gas emissions reductions projects. And I think this is a very good bill that essentially acknowledges actually also the importance of local governments. I think we should support Rich Gordon and Bill 1970. And we're asking, so we have a letter prepared for board president's signature actually, and we're asking to authorize the board president to sign the letter of support for AB 1970.
I would like to make the motion that this district support AB 1970.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll second it.
All right, very good. Any further discussion?
Bill, by the way.
Thank you, Bill. Any further discussion?
I don't, just the question, do we know how much money's involved at all? I mean, has this cap and trade actually begun in California? And if so, do we know what the money, I'm just curious on the details. It is fine from an electoral standpoint, but does it mean anything?
It hasn't started for us, that's for sure. Do you know anything, Dave, when this would start? Kevin?
I mean, it would be nice to have something with some dollar signs behind it, but at this point, it sounds to me like, gosh, we're hoping it might get started someday. Good luck.
The California Air Resources Board says the California Cap and Trade Program took effect in early 2012.
Do we know how
So-
much money on this behind it? I'm just curious.
I don't know. I'm Googling as fast as I can, but this does say that the program would receive cap and trade auction revenue to fund competitive grants. So I believe that suggests there is an existing cash flow they're trying to dip into.
Yeah. It doesn't have any impact on my support. I'm just curious what ultimate intention is there.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Director Slater Carter,
Aye.
Director Harvey.
Aye.
Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Wilson,
Aye.
Director Huber.
Aye.
All right, motion.
And on that note, I do have to sign off because I need to go through security at this point.
All right, well, thank you very much for making the effort to be here. I know how much trouble it is when you're in the middle of traveling. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and I'll sign off.
All right, so we show Director Huber leaving the meeting at 9:15. Okay, reports. Oh, I'm sorry, number 7, review and possible action concerning cancellation of next regular scheduled meetings, April 17th and May 1st.
So we recommend to cancel the next regular scheduled meetings on April 17th and May 1st.
I do understand that actually, the general manager may be absent, but if there's a need to convene a special meeting for the acquisition agreement.
We can always convene a meeting.
Absolutely.
Secretary.
If there's a need for that.
Okay, hearing no objection, let's move on to reports. Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side.
So we had a meeting on March 24th, and we reviewed the budget again, and the budget is being passed to the general managers for comment, and then it'll come back to us to be sent on for approval. So the budget is in the process of being reviewed. We have a new general manager coming on board at SAM on April 21st, Rob Hopkins, and he's looking forward to beginning this job, and will probably be the budget maybe will be held for final approval for his comment when he comes in at this point. Scott, do you want to add to that?
We did hear the item about the flusher truck. I think we have gotten that unstuck and moving forward. It's kind of a big deal because we're going for a big truck, but this should help us do a better job of maintaining the system up and down the coast from here to Half Moon Bay. Our policy handbook is being revised. That's good. You got to do that every now and then. And that was all of our open session work.
We also approved our engineer SRT to go ahead and begin study of the vacuum valves, and to get that project going again, get things rolling.
Okay, Mid-Coast Community Council, Catherine, do you have anything?
Pardon me?
Bill's not here. Bill Kehoe's not here. Do you have anything to report on Mid-Coast Council?
No, nothing to report.
Okay, how about on CSDA? Nothing on CSDA?
This is very fuzzy. Nothing on CSDA either.
Okay. Somewhat, if I could just chime in, something related, kind of related. We've got a very nice letter from Joshua Cosgrove, who's with North Coast County Water District. At the March 4th Special District Selection Committee, he was elected to serve as the regular Special District member on the Local Agency Formation Commission of San Mateo County, or better known as LAFCO. So it's a nice thank you letter. I'll pass it around for anyone who wants to see it. All right, CCWD Committee, Director Harvey.
You saw the results where we had one meeting. Bill Huber and I and Clemens and Dave Dixon and Ken Corverdale and Steve. What's Steve's last name? I forgot. The new board member. Flint. Flint. Yeah. And we discussed cooperation and among the districts, and we're looking at talking about implementing the steps for emergency agreement, and you heard that in the agenda this evening. That's it.
Okay, attorney's report. Directors, do you have anything else to add? Reports? General manager's report.
Nothing to add.
All right, well, thank you everyone for coming, and with that, hearing no objection, we are adjourned at 9:20.